Good morning and welcome to Andrea Speaks TV. I am your host, Andrea, bringing you commentary you can use. And this is episode 36. And today I want to discuss Frederick Douglass, who you see on the screen. Frederick Douglass was an African American abolitionist, orator, newspaper publisher, and author. Now, on July 5th, 1852, Frederick Douglass gave what would become one of his most famous speeches to a group at Corinthian Hall in Rochester, New York. Now, today, being 169 years later, his words are still relevant for the times that we live in. All right, so some of the information that I'm sharing with you all comes from Time, and I just want to talk to you about the speech as well as the significance of his speech. So make sure that you subscribe to the channel. Before we get into it, make sure you subscribe to the channel, share this video, and if you find the information to be helpful, if you say, hey, you know what, I learned something from this, please make sure you like the video at the end. All right, so just to give you some background information, according to the information from Time, it says the speech was originally delivered at a moment when the country was fiercely locked in debate over the question of slavery. But there's a reason why it has remained famous more than 150 years after emancipation. Now, the name of this historic speech is What to the Slave is the 4th of July. Okay. Now, to some, the article says celebrations of American independence on July 4th are a reminder of the country's hypocrisy on the matter of freedom, as slavery played a key role in the nation's history even today, okay? In the nation's history, all right? Even today, the article says Americans' history of racism is still being written, while other forms of modern-day slavery persist in the U.S. and around the world. Now, one person who felt that way was Frederick Douglass, again, the famous abolitionist who was himself born into slavery. When the Ladies' Anti-Slavery Society of Rochester, New York, invited Douglass to give a July 4th speech in 1852, Douglass opted instead to speak on July the 5th. Now, the article says, addressing an audience of about 600 at the newly constructed Corinthian Hall, he started out by acknowledging that the signers of the Declaration of Independence were, and I quote, brave and great men, and that the way they wanted the republic to look was in the right spirit. Okay, but he said, speaking more than a decade before slavery was ended nationally, a lot of work still needed to be done so that all citizens can enjoy, and I quote, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay. Now, the article goes on to share several pieces of information, but I do want to highlight, and again, this is some information in the article. It says Uncle Tom's Cabin. Around the same time, Uncle Tom's Cabin had just been published that spring and was taking the country by storm. All right. The country was in the midst of crises over fugitive slave rescues in the wake of the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850. The political party system was beginning to tear itself asunder over the expansion of slavery. And it was also an election year. The 1852 presidential election was heating up that summer, and the Nativist Party was rising. It was an extraordinary political movement. Now, the article does go on to share that it was also a turbulent time for Frederick Douglass as well, a turbulent time for him personally. The article shares in the late 1840s and into the 1850s, he was struggling to sustain the newspaper he founded, the North Star, and several other things was going on with him as well. Okay. The article even shares that his friend Julia Griffin, the treasurer of the Rochester group, invited him to give the 1852 speech, was one of the people helping him fundraise to keep his newspaper alive. Okay. The article also shares that Frederick Douglass did some of his greatest writing in the early 1850s during the terrible personal crisis in his life. Okay. And right there in the middle, it came the greatest speech, what some would consider his greatest speech that he ever delivered. Of the hundreds of speeches he had already delivered in his life. Okay, now, but the 1852 speech, What to the Slave is the 4th of July, remains the best known of his addresses on the occasion, the article says, especially as it became even more widely read in the late 20th century, okay, with the events like the public reading sponsored by the Vermont Humanities Council and a powerful reading by James Earl Jones in 2004. So, actually, in the description of the video, I did go and put the YouTube link, and I want you all to go and watch the video and watch and listen to the great legendary actor James Earl Jones read Frederick Douglass's speech, What to the Slave is the 4th of July. So, again, very different times were going on in 1852. Even today in 2021, 169 years later, many of Frederick Douglass's points are still relevant for the times that we live in today. All right. So you all make sure you check the link or click the link in the description box. I'll also go back and post it in the comments after this live video. Let me know how you felt about some of the points in Frederick Douglass's historic speech, What to the Slave is the 4th of July. Do you feel like many of the points that he mentioned, the way he was feeling, do you still feel like it's relevant today? Let me know. I would love to know your thoughts in the comments. All right. Thank you all so much for tuning in. This is episode 36 of Andrea Speaks TV. Make sure you subscribe, like the video if you found this information to be helpful. If you say, hey, you know what? I didn't know that, or I took a different perspective. I really learned something. If you feel that way, please make sure you hit the like button. Also, share this video with family members and friends, and make sure you subscribe. So thank you all again so much for your support. I appreciate each and every one of you. This is Andrea Speaks TV.